So, Kathy, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Just briefly tell me who you are. What makes Kathy Barnette?
I'm going to start with this, and then you ask me whatever question you want thereafter. I mean, because where do you really begin? I love my country. I want good for not just my family, but the families of this country. And back in late 1999, I'm looking around, I'm watching the direction our country is going, and I start thinking to myself, there's this famous quote that the only thing that is necessary for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. And back in 1999, I saw that you have a lot of good people who consider themselves the silent majority for some reason. And I realized that because we've been so silent, we've allowed some of the most reprobate among us to wiggle their way into positions of authority. And as a result, we're living the kind of lives that we're living. And so back in 1999, I decided to step forward. I ran in the race in my first congressional district race back in 2020. And that just kind of started the ball rolling of me finding ways to stay involved, to be involved, to get in front of the American people, and to use my story and how I was raised really as a way to inspire American people to remember why this is the greatest country. I know you're not from here, but but why America is so awesome and why we need to do our part to fight for her. And so that has really, I think that story kind of envelops who I am, who I always have been. Someone who loves this country, who wants good, not just for my family, but for others, and a person with the spirit who's willing to fight and find a way to have my voice heard. And so that really, my race, my own run for my own races, as well as coming alongside Vivek Ramaswamy in his race, is really just a snapshot of who I am. I want good, I want better, and I'm willing to fight for it.
Has it always been as a Republican?
Yes. Now, kind of like most Black people, it is some truth that if you're Black, you're Democrat. And so, yes, I was a Democrat back in my early college days, but really with no conversation on, hey, you're Black, you must vote Democrat.
Well, Joe Biden did.
Yes, I don't think he meant to do that, but that's kind of kind of an aftermath of having some form of dementia. You say things that you don't really intend to say out loud. But for me, I remember when I was, turning 18, I was so excited to vote. I did all the work, all the homework. I had like back then, the equivalent of spreadsheets of looking at who the candidates were, what their positions were. And then I walked into the voting booth and I voted Democrat all the way down, right? It's like subconsciously, my mind just overlooked the research and you just see what you see. And it really wasn't until I was a junior in college that I wasn't majoring in politics. I'm majoring in finance, corporate finance. But I decided I want to get involved in politics. And so I went to the first Democrat office that I saw. I walked in and I'm like, I want to help you in your campaign. And this man is speaking to me. And as he's talking, almost like an audible voice, it wasn't, but I heard so clearly within myself, do you even know what he believes? Do you even know why he believes what he believes? Why are you in here? And as I'm sitting there trying to think to myself, why did I walk into this man's office? What are his positions on the issues that I care about? Why am I even in? And I could not recall one issue. It was solely because he's a Democrat. And I could not wait for this man to take his breath so that I can scurry up out of there. But that was the beginning. It was a seed that was planted of why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you voting the way that you're voting? Are you controlling your vote, or are you an automaton, or you're doing the bidding of others? And it really was at that young age, as a junior in college, of a seed that had gotten planted, of beginning to really evaluate what these politicians say, what the policies they support, and how those policies show up in the predominantly Black communities in which I was living in at the time. And when you really do that work, it becomes very clear that, especially now, I mean, I think we're celebrating the 60th year of LBJ and his Great Society ideas and how he was going to make the Black lives better, the Black community so much better.
Wasn't it that he said, he said something like, I think I'm paraphrasing, but my welfare reforms will make sure the Negro votes for us for the next 200 years.
He used a different version of that word, Negro. And yeah, he did say that he would keep us voting Democrat for the next 50 years. Well, now it's 60 years. And the Black community is still overwhelmingly voting Democrat. And we're voting for the very policies that are harming our communities and people who look like me. And so when I go into predominantly Black communities or have the opportunity to talk about, Black issues, I mean, that's my question to the Black community. How many more generations are we willing to sacrifice at the altar of the Democrat platform? Because we know what they get. They cannot get the White House unless they secure 92 to 95% of the Black vote. But I believe it's a legitimate question to ask. We know what you get, but what are we getting? We have the worst communities, the worst streets, the worst cases of violence, low, meaningful job activity. Our children are ducking and dodging just across the street. Poor schools, poor scholastic reports. So what exactly are we getting? And I think it's a legitimate question that must be asked and must be answered by the Democrat Party. Fortunately, I believe a lot of Black people are waking up to that in this particular election, and it's very exciting to see.
Now, in the UK, lots of people think, because they just see the highlight reel of the likes of Barack Obama. But what did he actually do to the Black community? Did he actually bring them up, or did he put them further down?
Another legitimate question, and it's one that I ask my Black uncles and relatives and other Black people who are just so excited that Barack Obama was in office, because he's Black. And as a Black woman growing up in the Deep South, I have the blood of slaves coursing through my veins. I understand the significance of a Black person, not Kamala Harris kind of Black, but a real Black person.
Well, Candace Owens found out that she wasn't.
I understand the significance, the symbolic significance of having someone like Barack Obama, a Black man. Although his mother is white, no one actually acknowledges that. But history books see him as a Black man. Most Americans see him as a Black man. So as a Black woman growing up in the Deep South with the blood of slaves coursing through my veins, I understand the symbolic significance of having someone like Barack Obama take office. Now, once you lay your emotions to the side and you begin to see how his policies trickle their way down to my kitchen table, this is where we should be judging everything. Not I can acknowledge the feel-good aspect of it. And I can acknowledge the feel-good aspect of a Black man specifically being put in a position of power. But once I move past my emotions and now I'm looking at, well, how has his policies impacted how I get to live my life? Did it move me out of one zip code and into a better zip code? Were we able to get better jobs? Did we see better economic opportunities come into predominantly Black neighborhoods? Or are children scoring better on some of these standardized tests, or worse, right? And when I look at it from that perspective, he did absolutely nothing to improve the lives of predominantly Black people.
And what do you make of when, when politicians on both sides, they start to talk about a plan for Hispanic America, Black America, white? What does that make you think when you hear that? Would you rather it was like a plan for America rather than just a plan for Black America, white America? Because in the UK, we've kind of started to move into that territory. Previously,
segmenting.
Starting to segregate people when it comes to, trying to win votes. It used to, not that long ago, it used to be like, here's my plan for Britain. Whereas now it's starting to move into splitting it up into certain votes. Would you rather politicians on both sides go, I don't have a plan for Black America, I've got a plan for America, which encompasses all of us. Would you rather see that?
I mean, yes, as a human being, as an American, because I recognize that if a policy is good for you as a white person, then 9 out of 10 times that policy is going to be good for me as a Black person, right? If that policy is going to bring more economic opportunities for you as a white person, well, 9 out of 10 times that policy is going to bring economic opportunities for me as a Black person, right? But I also understand the power of segmenting us, right? Divide and conquer, right? If I can divide everyone and get everyone focused on myopic issues, because you may be white, I may be Black, but beyond that, do you need a job? Do you need safe streets? Do you need your trash picked up on a regular basis? Do you need good schools for your children? Well, guess what? Black people want that too. Black people need that too, right? But if I can get you not to focus on the things that bring us together, that causes us to be more alike than different, then I can control you and I can manipulate you and I can create a message that will move the needle more for those in this more segmented population. And that's exactly what they've done. Jill Lepore, a Harvard professor, wrote a wonderful book, If Then, I think that's the name of the book, If Then. And she talks about how this whole business of segmenting communities and nations started as a business strategy. Because if I can aggregate all of this data and put it into a model that says, if this, then this will occur, and if I can make those predictions, then I can control and I can charge higher advertising fees and marketing fees. And then they began to move it out of the business, commercial world into the world of politics. So it's a business model. It's probably not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So it's going to require people to recognize we're being manipulated. And then to decide, I don't want to be manipulated any longer. I don't believe any one side of the aisle controls truth, but I believe truth exists. And I believe it's our individual responsibility to go out here and seek that truth as the best we can. And then once you find a little portion of what you believe to be true, to put a stake in the ground until better information comes. And then you move and you plant a new stake there.
So moving into the now, the election is a few days away.
Yes.
Where do you see the Black vote going?
I believe that Donald Trump is going to win. I've always believed that in a fair election, Donald Trump will win.
Good point.
The concern is whether or not that win is going to be recorded as a win. And having ran in my first race in 2020 in the state of Pennsylvania, I know exactly what happened during that 2020 election. And unfortunately, many of those things have not been corrected. In fact, things have gotten worse. More drop boxes, open 24 hours, 7 days a week, no chain of custody. So in many respects, it has gotten worse since 2020. And so that brings me a tremendous amount of concern and angst about not if Donald Trump is going to win. I believe he's going to win. Kamala Harris is a very unserious candidate. And I don't believe we have an overwhelming majority of Americans who want open borders. I don't believe we have an overwhelming majority of Americans who want the entire world to just come into our country and to get a sizable share of our social benefits. I don't believe that there's an overwhelming majority of Americans who want to murder their own children. Yes, there are some who want to abort, but I don't believe as a platform, the overwhelming majority of Americans are going to vote for that, right? And so I've always believed that Donald Trump is going to win. The concern is whether it's going to be recorded as such.
You made an interesting point there, actually, about how you think that, there was a lot of fraud in the last election. You think it's worse now. What sort of thing, is there anything you think is now safer and more proper when it comes to elections, about?
No.
No?
Short answer, no. In Pennsylvania, in the state of Pennsylvania, like I said, just, if I bring it all the way down to, from a state level down to a county-wide level in the county of Montgomery County, which is the third most densely populated county in the state of Pennsylvania, the second wealthiest county in the state of Pennsylvania, we just added 13 additional drop boxes. These drop boxes, so we did not reduce the number of drop boxes, we added, so that's one thing, it is exacerbated from 2020. Now they will be open 24 hours, 7 days a week, no cameras, no chain of custodies. We're just on a hope and a prayer that everyone does the honorable thing. I don't have that kind of trust in humanity, unfortunately, that we will do the honorable thing when we're being told someone is the equivalent of Hitler, and that he's a threat to democracy, and by all means necessary, we must stop him. I think that is going to encourage some people not to do the honorable thing. And I think when you're adding additional drop boxes with no chain of custody, open 24 hours, 7 days a week, I think it is, it creates an environment for people to not be honorable. So, yes.
Why do you think that's not being fixed? Because the Republicans have had the House for a while now. Is there nothing they could have done that could have fixed a lot of this?
Yeah, I mean, whether you're looking at the state level or national level, no one is really talking about 2020. It's kind of, you don't want to be labeled an election denier. I have always said that it was a lot of shenanigans that went on in 2020. I believe there was a lot of fraud that went on. I believe 2020 was theft by 1,000 cuts. When I read a report a couple of days ago that says just with the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop, that had about a 17% impact on which way the election went. So it wasn't just one thing that Democrats did in 2020, not even just Democrats, but it wasn't just one thing. It was theft of that election by 1,000 different cuts, whether it was the suppression of real news like the Hunter Biden laptop, whether it was the Russia constant hoax that was being perpetrated and shoved down the throats of Americans, whether it was other things like Twitter suppressing individual freedom of speech, whether it was all the drop boxes. I think it was $500 million that was invested in these drop boxes that just miraculously popped up. There was a number of things that went on in that race. And although we no longer have COVID, for example, we still have the drop boxes. They have actually increased in the number of it. So we have some issues that we're walking into. Why legislators did nothing? I think that is more by design than anything else. Plus, it's just not a very popular topic to discuss. The moment you start discussing election, in a way that is meaningful, that fixes many of our issues, you will quickly find yourself being crossed out on some of the A-list invites and Christmas parties, and you're going to be labeled, and you're going to lose your contracts and job opportunities. And we live in a culture where those who are in a position of power, we live in a culture among them where there are a lot of cowards, and they're, whether looking at the courts all the way down.
And finally, and this is like a two-part question, so let's say Trump wins, what's the one policy you're most excited about with him winning and implementing? And let's say Kamala wins, what's the one policy of hers you're most afraid of?
Trying to find something wrong with the Harris-Biden administration and then looking into the Harris-Walz administration is like trying to drink water from a fire hydrant. It's like so much is going to go wrong. Like, how do you pick one thing? With Donald Trump, I think, again, it's the inverse. There's so much that he can do that will be good. So this is not in order of priority, but just it's one of many very important things that I believe Donald Trump will be able to stymie, and that is prevent World War III. I believe we're already in the midst of World War III. I can name 17 different wars right now that are raging all around the world, and America's hand is involved in the overwhelming majority of them. I just believe we're not reporting it as World War III, but Donald Trump, I believe, will go a long way. Every day matters. So, I think the next 7 days are going to be very precarious days for our country. We will see if we actually still live in a republic or if the communist takeover is complete in this country. So I think the next 7 days are going to be very precarious. But even after November 5th, between November 5th and January 20th, it's going to be some very unnerving days. But I think Donald Trump will go a long way, if he wins, by the grace of God, to stymie and to pull us back from a full-fledged breakout into World War III, followed immediately by what they're doing to our children with the whole transgenderism, the mutilation of little kids' bodies, being chemically castrating little boys. It's just anathema. Even a dog protects their young better than what we've done in this nation, specifically among these little children who have no idea who they are, and yet they're making permanent decisions to their bodies. So those are very important topics to me, and I am, hopeful how much we can pull ourselves off the precipice. I'm not sure, but I certainly believe with Donald Trump, we stand a chance in pulling our nation off the precipice and incorporating some common sense into our day-to-day.
Well, Kathy, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.